So Chelsea was given no advance warning of questions. She's like, what are you going to ask me about today, Brett? And I was like, oh, just your story. So if it's disjointed, just pull me up and we'll see how we go. But Chelsea's spoken, as Paul said, a number of our conferences and been really helpful for people. So welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Chelsea's book is here, and I'll just preempt this. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, we have 2 copies that we're going to give away today. And the first 2 questions that are decent that come up with your name on them after the presentation, we'll give those books out. And there were a couple of questions in the last session that weren't decent, but they were anonymous, but they were at least funny. You'll see that.
Okay.
So there's a few out there. So Chelsea, where did you grow up, and what led you to the work you're now doing?
So I grew up in Albury, Wodonga, on the Albury side, very territorial down there on the New South Wales-Victorian border, and had a beautiful upbringing. I came from a very low socioeconomic family. We've talked about this before. And so where I lived, a lot of our community were Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people. And the one thing that I do remember from my childhood, though, was that I was very loved. Both of my parents didn't actually graduate from school. So my mum was very much the driver for me to finish school, but also to get university qualified because she wanted a better life for me. I remember at 16, and I also played a decent level of basketball. And so I played with a girl you might have heard before called Lauren Jackson. And so that was the calibre of play I was always competing up against, no pressure. And Loz and I were very good friends, and we played together all the way through state basketball teams, and I went to college ball in Oklahoma. However, I think one of the best books I ever received when I was 16, it was called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. Yep. And that was the catalyst for me to go, I can write a different story. I don't have to stay here in this area of Albury. I can actually do something and cognitive flex here and do something a bit different with my life. And so fast forward to then I go to university. I go to college ball and I play it at an elite level. And after the first year of playing in Oklahoma, I then fractured my sacrum twice. And so at the age of 20, I retired and I came back, which was, again, a bit of a moment in time for me because I speak to a lot of my friends who are Olympians and this sort of post-Olympic depression that they go through. And I felt that as an athlete because I thought, wow, that was my life. I was meant to be playing in the NBA, and now where do I go from here? And I was lucky because I had fallen in love with my boyfriend, who is now my husband, before I went to Oklahoma, and I was meant to be gone for 4 years. And so I thought, well, the silver lining of this is that I get to come back and be with Jay. And so came back, went to university, and after university, I ended up in a small company called Johnson & Johnson. You may have heard of them before. After 10 years there, I was a general manager towards the end of my career, and Jay and I were desperate to have a baby. In fact, we tried to have a baby for 7 years. And so as you can imagine, when you finally find out that you were pregnant, we were so elated to finally find out we were having a baby. However, then the most ironic thing happened to me. And the reason why I say ironic, Brett, is because, you know, I'm usually a very happy person and I'm a driven person by nature. However, 9 weeks post-birth, I end up in a psychiatric hospital fighting for my life. I had terrible suicidal ideation. I was suffering severely postnatal depression. And the safest place I could actually be was laying in a hospital bed. Now, I always feel like when life throws you adversity like that, you kind of get to a fork in the road and you have to make a couple of choices. And these are my choices that are needed to be made. One, do I return back pre-mental illness to this fast-paced lifestyle, living here in Rose Bay in Sydney, or do I learn and I grow from this gift, right, that the universe has just served up? So at the end of the 5-week stay, my amazing psychiatrist, she said to me, Chelsea, you have a weird fascination with your own brain. You're a really nice person and you've walked through the shoes of a very unwell patient. I think you'd make a lovely psychologist. So I thought, rightio. So I did that. I left Sydney. I moved to a small town called Gerringong. I was just having a chat to a few people here in the room. Does everyone know where Gerringong is? It's beautiful down there. And so I moved to a small country town, and that was guidance from my psychiatrist of saying, Chelsea, how do you want to feel in the future? And I said to her, I want to feel calm. I want to feel less anxious. And she said, from now on with your goals, not about what you want to have, it's all about the feeling. Yeah. And so all of my decisions then, Brett, came about that. Okay, let me move out of Rose Bay and move to a smaller town. Calmer life.
Yeah.
Let me go back to university and study psychology. I can now learn tools for myself, but also teach our beautiful daughter these techniques to stay calm. I will also choose my friends based on the aftertaste of who that person I am with when I leave them, but also how they make me feel. Do they lift me up? Do they bring good energy?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. And so all those decisions started to be made like that. And a few months into my training, when I was in Gerringong, I said to my husband, wow, imagine if the corporate world knew what I'm learning. This mindfulness stuff, like how to actually reduce stress without smashing Hendrick's gin every night, which was my coping strategy back in the day. And he said to me, I think this would be a really cute hobby. so
Poor Jay.
Jay. So I started training the Gerringong Rotary Club. I started training all the hospitals for free, as you do when you are a startup business. And I loved it. I would see these people around Gerringong. Bob would be at the ocean pools with me at 85, going, Chelsea, I'm doing that gratitude in the morning. Geez, I feel good. I'm like, Bob, that's making me feel so good. And anyway, as opportunity happens, 6 months down the track, eBay inquire. And my good friend said, look, eBay's quite progressive. This was 9 years ago. Mindfulness isn't really a thing here in Australia. They're interested in what you're doing. Come up to Sydney. And I caught a train everywhere because you have zero money when you're a startup founder. And so I came up to Sydney, met the HR director, and she said, oh, I like the sound of this. Come in for one session and we'll pay you. And I'm like, what, you could pay me for this work? Great. So I came up and she said, look, we love what you've just delivered. How about you do another 8 sessions? And then the general manager of eBay moved over to Uber, and he said, I love what you did for our culture at eBay. Will you move with us to Uber now? And I said, I'd love to. And then I put a LinkedIn post up, and then Westpac picks me up. And then all of a sudden, this little hobby had all this momentum, and 9 years down the track, we do 10 keynotes a week. We've trained 2 million people across the world. I mean, I feel so great. This isn't work for me, Brett. This is a pure joy.
It's a great story. So we were referred Chelsea. She came, did a great session. We got such great feedback. So can you share with our group today, like the key things that you can use now to, and what I love is that how intentional this story was. I had this situation, I said, right, I have to change my life. I think it's so powerful. For the people in the room, what are the key things that we can all use on a daily basis to improve the way we feel about what we're doing?
Oh, that's a really good question. Do you mind if I poll the audience on this just to see what they want to hear about and what's most relevant for them? So usually when I'm doing these polls and keynotes, I'm not sure if you've heard of Hippo. Probably most of you have heard of Hippo, where the highest paid person in the room carries the influence. Have you heard of that? So what we do instead is we get you to close down your eyes, and I'll give you 3 choices of what you want to know most about, and then I'll deliver the tool on that, if that's okay.
That's
also, so you don't get biases from your friends and seeing what they're voting for. So here we go. Number 1, do you want to know the fastest way right now that we're seeing in the neuroscience division of our university how to downregulate your system for stress? Like the fastest tool we have. That's number 1. Number 2 is, do you want to have a technique to get you back to sleep if you're waking up from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m.? Who's waking up there? Just a quick raise of hands. Most of us in this room. Don't worry, you're not alone.
What's going on
This
there?
is a common thing.
What is that? Okay.
Number 3, do you want to know probably the best tool and technique that I have so far for our future generation when it comes to raising resilient children? Ooh.
Guys, it feels like being in a restaurant where they say, which dessert would you like, or would you like the tasting plate, right? I personally go all 3, but I'm interested in the poll.
Okay.
What are we
eyes
thinking?
Are closed, everyone.
Okay,
eyes are closed. Here we go. We've got 3 options. You can only vote once. Here we go. Fastest way to reduce stress. Neuroscience backed. Nice. Okay. Hands down. 2, waking up from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. Need a great technique to get yourself back to sleep. Fantastic. Hands down. Number 3, resilience tool for our future generation. Wow.
Okay.
Look at that.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
So what should we do? Should we do
We'll do what the audience requested.
Okay. Right. Well, I'm just fascinated by
That's
this.
why Brett didn't vote.
Yeah.
Hey?
I'm like, what's this non-sleeping business? I'm like, what is that? Okay. Righto, number 3. Let's do it.
We can do that. We can circle back to that if we have time.
I'm fascinated.
For sure. This is not only just for children, but it's also for us as adults. We can go through some really discombobulating times, and it's really important that we have, proper coping strategies to get through things. And so, by far, it's one of the best things that I've learned for myself. Also, if you have limiting beliefs, and it's also the best thing that I've learned so far to teach Clara and the future. And so I'll credit the right person in science, but to first start off the story, it was my basketball coach 20 years ago who actually taught me the technique. And so I remember turning up to this basketball weekend. I'm training hard and I'm playing hard, and a bit like any kind of sports carnival, they call your name out at the end of the weekend. And so Lauren Jackson's there as well. So that was, again, the calibre of player of the competition. And so I'm sitting there at the end of this weekend, desperate to make this state team, and my heart is just pounding through my chest. If you've ever been at a sports carnival, you'll know this feeling, and you're sitting there and you're like, please pick me, because the destiny is kind of going to be revealed, right, for the rest of your life. That's how you feel as a 16-year-old. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, please pick me. And the answer was no, right? They didn't call my name out. And so I'm crying and I'm devastated, and I call my coach. Coach, you're not going to believe it, I didn't make this team. And do you know what he said to me? He said, Chelsea, you're just not good enough. And I said, well, thank you, coach, that's a good pep talk.
Very helpful.
But then he said something so profound. He said, you're just not good enough yet. And, for us in psychology, yes, is a powerful word, it's a strong word, but what's even more profound for us is that word yet. What yet does for our future generation, as well as for us as adults, is that it takes the full stop off your potential. It says that success still lies ahead. It says that you might not have all the answers right now, but with hard work you can get there. You're just not good enough yet. However, if you come with me and you train every morning at the Albury Basketball Stadium before school at 5 a.m, do you know how cold, by the way, it gets in Albury?
It's cold.
It is freezing down there. We change your diet, right? We put you on creatine. We bulk you up in the gym. You're going to lift 5 times a week. You might just make that Australian junior team 6 months from now. Now, that, everyone, was a driving force for me, because he was bang on. I wasn't good enough yet, but with a different approach I could be. So fast forward 6 months, I make the Australian junior team. I was actually the second draft pick. Who was number 1?
Lauren Jackson.
Loz. And I was okay being her number 2 girl. But the reason why I tell people this story at the start is because when I was admitted into hospital, into St John of God psychiatric unit on day 1, the darkest day of my life, and my psychiatrist, she said to me, Chelsea, right now, I want you to tell me about a time that was hard for you. You never thought you'd get through it. You had to face it with motivation, perseverance and grit, and you came through the other side of that. Share with me a story like that right now. Do you know where my mind went, everyone? It went back, right, 20 years ago, to that basketball experience. And she said this to me, if you can get through that, you can get through this. And now I think about postnatal depression all the time, because so far in my life, there's been nothing worse than waking up in a psychiatric unit after giving birth to Clara. Life can throw you a pandemic, life can throw you a lot of things, and you know that you're going to be okay. The main message here, everyone, is that it's okay to hit the pavement. It's okay to have tough times in this life. It's okay to have challenges. It's okay to have change. In fact, it's inevitable, right? It's a part of the human being journey. And if you ever find yourself in a tough spot, like where I was, always remember that you will recover. And it's also in the challenging times, that's where the grit lies. And so the lady's name in science, if you want to dive a bit deeper into this topic, her name is Dr. Carol Dweck. She's got a great book out there called Mindsets. Just so I know that we kind of all got the vibe for the power of yet, I might just ask you to repeat a few statements after me. Is that okay? Here we go. I can't speak publicly yet. I can't speak publicly yet. I can't pay off my mortgage yet. I can't pay off my mortgage yet. And I don't have regular bowel movements yet. That's very good work.
And I can't sleep from 1 a.m. till 4 p.m. yet.
Yes.
Who are these people?
Yes.
It's a great one. And I have heard it, guys, in the financial sphere where people have said change the changed the term from I can't afford that to I can't afford that yet.
Yes.
And I didn't know where it came from. It's really great.
And it's also like we can turbocharge that with action as well. You know, Carol Dweck's work's great, but what we've worked out is how to turbocharge that to put up action against your life lessons. And you just literally add on these 3 words after the power of yet. However, if I. And then you put your action items in. For example, I can't speak publicly yet. My job, what Brett and I do most days, is everyone's number 1 fear in Australia. This is the number 1 fear, actually, public speaking. Number 2 fear in the country is?
Death.
Thank you.
What is it?
Death.
Death. Really?
So have a moment to think about that one.
So they think if they speak publicly, they'll die.
They will die.
That's-
They fear public speaking more than dying.
That's really scary.
Seinfeld had a great joke about it. He said, you know, people would prefer to be down in the box than giving the eulogy, right? Because of the fear factor. So it's a real fear, right? So if you had a fear of public speaking, the limiting belief of the child was that I can't speak publicly yet.
Yeah.
However, if I
Yeah.
join Toastmasters, get a speaker's coach, and employ some comedians, practice more regularly, have more fun, what happens? You get there. And the reason why I love that technique is because it's not just for us as adults, it's also for our children. And I've been drumming that into Clara since the age of 4, a bit like manners, right, and smiles. You tell your 4-year-old that all the time, you're like, is this even sinking in? A few years later, they repeat it back. And Clara used to always come up to me and say, Mum, I can't skip, or Mum, I can't climb the tree, or Mummy, I can't ride my bicycle with gears. And I used to always say to her, yet, my sweetheart, yet. However, you do these few things, you'll get there. And now she comes up to me at the age of 9 and says things like, Mummy, I can't surf yet. However, if you pay
get me
for
a
my
coach
lessons,
and buy me a great surfboard, a
Yeah.
pink one, I'll be there.
that's right. So she's like
I'm
this
worried
champion
about teaching
negotiator.
Audrey this technique.
But it breathes so much hope in my heart, Brett, because I now know that this child of ours has a growth mindset. Like Clara will hit the pavement, she has to in this life. I'm not mowing down her pathway. Why? Because she needs to fall over and skin up her knees. This all trophies for all children has ruined an entire generation when it comes to their grit. It really has. So they have to fall over. They have to have challenges. It's part of the human being journey. However, what we can do as adults is teach them the tools so they persevere.
Yeah, and you know, the lessons for children are always the lessons for all of us.
Absolutely.
That's so interesting. We learn so much through our kids. They teach us as much as we teach them, which is very interesting. I love that. So who wants to hear number? I'm just curious, but I am curious, George. Number 1. What was number 1?
Well, there's the down-regulating the system really quickly with the stress.
Yeah,
Or
is
there
anyone
was the
stressed?
sleep.
Does anyone here get stressed?
One to
This cameraman gentleman, Tristan here, he gets stressed. I'm feeling for you. Should we share that?
I think so.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm interested. If you've ever met anyone that's stressed, that sort of thing.
It's also a really quick tool. You know, it's everything I do is minimum input for maximum gain for my brain. We are all time compressed humans in this room. That's why I meditate every day for 10 minutes. I don't do it for 40, I do it for 10, because when I see research that goes, you only need 10 minutes to get the maximum benefit, after that's kind of tapered results. So I'm not doing it for 40, I'm doing it for 10. If I'm doing cold water therapy, I'm doing 30 seconds cold shower. I'm not sitting in an ice bath for 7 minutes.
Yeah, who has time to do that?
That, right?
I
We
see
do not
these-
have to.
I saw this morning routine the other day, and I was like, if I did that morning routine, I'd probably have to go back to sleep. It's like 2 hours. Like, what's that about?
That's right. We've got stuff to do,
Yeah.
right? We have to get
It's
stuff
true.
done. And so this technique, I love it for that. And so it was published in the Cells Report in 2018. It's called the physiological sigh. And how it goes, and I'll just get you to do it with me so you've kind of got it cemented up here in the hippocampus in your memory centre. So it sort of was like this long inhale in, and then a short, sharp inhale, and then a loud, audible exhale out. Just like that. Now, The reason why you need to do it like that, and I did it this morning as I was arriving, I had 3 coffees before I turned up, and that kind of tips me over a little bit. And so I did it, right, because I felt a little bit anxious, to be honest. I'm like, I need to down-regulate pronto.
And that was my fault. I did the last few days, I was getting these messages from Chelsea, what are you going to ask me? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't thought about that yet, but I'll come back to you. And Josh was there every day. I'm sorry about that. 3 coffees. Now show us this deep breath.
But this is it's really, really helpful. So it's a long inhale in, and then a short, sharp inhale, and then a loud exhale out, just like that. And so what's happening there is your brain and body are just magnificent. So that long inhale in is pulling the carbon dioxide out of the lungs, and that second, shorter, sharper inhale pulls out the last remaining carbon dioxide, and it has to be a loud sigh. Like that will stimulate your sigh neurons in your brainstem, telling your phrenic and vagus nerve, hey, it's time to calm down instantaneously. It is the fastest way we know how to downregulate you. 3 cycles of that will do. If you are a runner and you get a stitch, it's a great way to drop your stitch out as well. If you actually had a partner, you would do this when you sleep about once every hour. I'm not sure if does anyone sleep with their partners? Who's got a partner in here and sleeps with a human being? Yeah? Yeah, great.
My dog sighs like that as well.
Oh, relaxing. He's relaxing.
She does. She comes in,
she's
her little
relaxing.
sausage dog, and she
Does
gets
the
in
sigh.
there and she's like, and she does that big breath.
It's pretty amazing.
She knows the science.
She knows the science, and they're down-regulating all night, and we do too. And so if you are single or if you don't sleep in the same room as your partner, that's kind of what it looks like. But if you do sleep with someone and you let them go to sleep before you tonight and you watch them for a little while they're sleeping, not too long or too close, it does get very creepy if they wake up and you're there. But you will notice that. Right, and so I think that's a really beautiful thing. I think these things that we see always emerging in the science is super cool because, again, I need evidence-based behind me to make behavioural change. Otherwise, to be honest, I'm just not going to do it. And so that's...
So it's a great idea. I know a lot of people get in situations where they feel very overwhelmed, particularly if it's a very challenging situation. We certainly during COVID had a lot of clients under massive pressure. We had a lot of directors under huge pressure because clients are under pressure. But this idea of knowing how to breathe, if you've played a lot of sport, you tend to know a little bit more about breathing than others. I've learned as I've got older, through the kids in particular. So is this something people can go to the bathroom, they can get out of a room and they can use it to try and chill out?
100%. It's biologically shown, right?
And what's it doing?
It's literally getting your carbon dioxide dumping out, so you're balancing oxygen and carbon dioxide. That sigh stimulates the sigh neurons in the brainstem. So phrenic and vagus nerve will respond, and it kind of calms you down straight away. And so a lot of the lawyers or doctors that we train will do it before they walk into the courtroom, before they start operating. A lot of athletes do it before they run out onto the pitch. And so it's just a great one to have there that takes only a couple of seconds. And so I feel like that one there, if that's the only one that you remember or recall, it's brilliant. Obviously be mindful where you do it, right? Like if you're in a client meeting and you just stand up and start doing that at your prospective business, they're going to know something's going on for you right now. But it is honestly a wonderful technique. And
don't do it to your mother. Sometimes my children do it to my wife, and they get told not to sigh. Apparently there's some science now that says sighing's good. But
That's going to kill me.
I'm in real trouble. Okay, so that's excellent. The first one, so that if we haven't written it down, so yet is great. The second phrase is?
However, if I.
Second technique, breathe.
The physiological sigh.
Long breath, short breath, big sigh. Okay. Now, there were a lot of people who don't sleep. And the reason I'm interested is that my wife, she does this 1 till 4 business, right? You know how when you're sleeping and then you know someone else is not sleeping, this is very disturbing, this behaviour. And so I'm very curious as to who are these people that don't sleep. I have my own theories, but what's this all about? because it's much more common than I realised. So I've always got up very early. I go to bed, I get up early for whatever reason, no matter how much stress is going on, I can sleep. But I exercise hard early in the morning, which is the way I've I feel like I'm just dispersing whatever people call stress by moving, and then I'm pretty calm. By the time I go to sleep, I only go to sleep because I'm actually tired. So then I just go to sleep. So I do feel for these non-sleepers, although I don't understand them by, through personal experience. So I've been genuinely intrigued. And then as I've asked through Beck and others, a lot of people aren't sleeping. Now, the research into the importance of sleep I knew about through playing sport. In terms of recovery, sleep is just the number one health driver. So environment, darkness, coldness, la, 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 la. Got my own theories about that. I like to wake up the sun. What's going on? Because there seems to be a huge amount of it.
Absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of stimulation going on for a lot of people, and there's a couple of really easy hacks to get the deep REM sleep, I feel. And a lot of people also are functioning insomniacs. What I mean by that is that they usually get enough over 7 to 9 is kind of where World Health Organization sort of loves
7 to 9 hours?
7 to 9 hours, unless you have the genetic expression where you can sleep for 5 to 6. Statistically, usually the people that can do that is like 0.00001%. We're more likely to get hit by lightning in Australia than to have this gene expression. And so you will know that if that's you, because as a teenager you would have been sleeping for 5 or 6 hours and still thrive. But most of us need about 7 to 9.
And it's not a badge of honour to need 10 hours sleep or need 5, which is, I've got friends who are like, I just need 10 or 12 hours. I'm like, cool, man.
Yeah.
Do that.
Absolutely. We're all so unique. And I think that's the beautiful thing. We all got our own unique cloaks, and what works for us might not work for someone else, but also you're working with your genetics as well. So I think a couple of quick wins. But if you do have insomnia or functioning insomnia, and what I mean by that is that you have disrupted sleep for longer than 2 weeks, there's a really great place in Australia called the Wilcox Sleep Clinic. And I'm not sure if you've heard of them before, but I've used them personally when I've had insomnia. And they took about 2 weeks to get me back on track. And a lot of people who have insomnia feel like they're kind of done and dusted, and that's kind of it.
What is insomnia? It's interrupted sleep for more than 5 minutes, an hour?
Yeah, that's not been caused by a child waking you up or the new puppy waking you up. You kind of got into these poorer patterns of behaviour. I have these associations with your bedroom as sleeplessness. And so Wilcox are a very great resource here in Australia to go and get yourself some extra testing done. And three things that really are the culprits that throw out our deep REM sleep. And the reason why we're pretty fastidious about deep REM is because you need 90 minutes of that to wake up fully thriving, right? Restored energy, mojo, bouncing out of your bed. If you miss it, and even if you sleep for 7 hours, you still wake up and you think, I don't want to see my personal trainer. I think I've got low iron. I need 5,000 coffees to get to work. That's kind of the soundtrack. So 3 things that throw it out. I might poll everyone again and just see what they want to know about. Number 1, screens. Number 2, coffee. Number 3, alcohol. Oh my. Don't worry, I'm not going to say get off any of those. I will just let you know the education around what they're saying in the research, and then as adults we all make our own choices. They're the 3 choices. What do you want to know about the most?
All 3.
I'm
back to the tasting plate.
Where do we start?
I have a tasting plate view of life. I want to know everything.
Let's see where we start then. Let's poll people again. If you could just throw down your eyes again for me, please. Just a show of hands if you all know about the screens. Okay, hands down. Alcohol. Okay, hands down. And coffee. Yeah, nice. Okay, hands down.
Screens.
Screens it is. So
a lot of chat about this, so love to know the science, because there's 1,000 opinions.
So many opinions, and we look into a lot of different people's work as well, and please let me know if you hear different things as well out there. So what we see is that if you're on your screens half an hour before bed, say if you're a lark, early to bed, early to rise, who's kind of that vibe, that chronological clock? Okay, so your screen deadline time should be around 9 to 9:30. is the recommendation. That's not your bedtime. It's just when you need to kind of down, screens are now down. Night owls are a little bit different. They like to go to bed a little bit later, and their horsepower energy comes alive in the afternoon, evening in their prefrontal cortex, and they'll feel like that. Where are the night owls? Sometimes the party animals in the room. Fantastic. 10:30 to 11 is usually around the screen deadline time. Now, the reason why we say that is because you've got this beautiful thing in your brain called your pineal gland, and it'll start producing something that starts with M that you can get 10 milligrams a tablet in the USA.
What is that?
Melatonin.
I thought it was M&M's.
So melatonin will start getting produced in your brain, particularly of what you are chronologically at those periods of time.
Okay.
However, if you're on the screens after those periods of time, that blue, red, yellow light, even if you wear blue light blocking lenses like what I do, it'll still stream back through, plus it's the stimulation of the content. It'll hit the pineal gland, and it'll tell the pineal gland to switch off the taps of melatonin, 0. And so why that's so important, you know that, is that you need that hormone to take you down deep and keep you paralysed in that deep REM sleep. And so many people miss it because what happens is they're on the screens. Now, being on the screens right before bed, you'll still go to sleep, won't we? We fall asleep in front of the TV. We will fall asleep with the phone on our chest. We put the phone down, we're asleep. Sometimes our latency scores, which means how fast it takes you to go off, is like 3 minutes. However, if you're going to track yourself with an Oura Ring,
I used
device,
a Whoop.
You use Whoop's great too.
So good.
So good.
It's amazing.
Because your dashboard doesn't lie.
No, it just helped me to share with Beck that having a TV on in the bedroom is not helpful. Science.
Love Beck.
Yeah, and she was like, because this was a 1 till 4 thing.
Yeah.
So
it's huge.
reading this science. I bought a Whoop. I'm wearing it. It comes up on your phone. You can prove where your deep REM sleep occurs. Yeah. And you could, over 2 weeks, we were like, hang on, that's really clear. And
it's
it was
pretty
really
remarkable.
helpful.
Yeah, so it's just such a win in terms of, and you can do this your own trial on yourself. You know, wear a Whoop, wear an Oura Ring, and try it out, because your body will not lie. Try yourself out doing a half an hour routine without any screens, and just do things that are relaxing for the brain, like reading a book or talking to your partner. Imagine that. Yeah,
so like no coffee. I was trying to do no coffee after 2.
Great, no coffee after 2.
I was trying to make sure that I was off my screens by 8. Not that I felt the screens were a challenge, and I just didn't want a TV on. And then because I'm a lark versus a...
Me too.
What are those late night people?
Night owls.
Night owls. Beck's a night owl. I was like, you night owl away. I'll be going to sleep. If there are people are night owls.
I love this discussion.
Some people are larks. You really do in a relationship have to say, I don't mind so long as I can sleep.
100%.
I'm not at my best if I don't sleep well.
Absolutely.
The health impact of bad sleep on everyone is enormous. So you've really got to get sleep right. We were trying to work out, one of my sons is like interrupted sleep. And then I'm like, honey, you know, you know, this is what it says, and we're trying to help him. Or just, Tom's fine, Nick. So as you're starting to work with your kids to try and help them regulate their sleep better, then we were like, oh, that's very interesting. So, you know, I think it's a big, and I wasn't aware how many people struggle to sleep.
So many. And it's a bit of a taboo, people talking about if you don't sleep in the same room as your partner. Like, I haven't slept in the same room as my husband, Jay, let's call him Jay. Because that's what his name is.
Yeah.
Jay's like 6'5", my husband, and I'm 5'11", and that's a lot of human being in a king-size bed. And he snores a bit and I fidget. And we've been married for like 17 years. So I'm like, mate, I've seen your face a lot. Get to that other bedroom. We love each other a lot. We're very intimate throughout the week. However, we just don't sleep in the same room. Even when we book hotels, we book separate rooms. It's such a thing for us. And I know that's like, oh my gosh. We hold hands when we walk down the street. When we're watching a show, we cuddle. We have a really healthy sex life. It's just that we sleep in separate rooms. And guess what? We get a good 8 hours and we talk to each other really nicely the next day. And I've had a chance to miss his face. So it works for us. I'm not saying that that's going to work for anyone in here, but I think it's just normalising these conversations. And I think, Brett, one of the big things that I found out, I did the My DNA Life test. I'm not sure if anyone knows about the My DNA testing. So I did that. It's a cheek swab. It's an over-the-counter product here in Australia. They'll have a different one for other countries as well. We're kind of used to cheek swabs these days thanks to COVID. It sends the results here down to the geneticist down in Melbourne, and it will unlock DNA data about what your body responds to. And so if you do these kinds of tests, from memory, I think it's like $130. Yep. Like as the product. And so you just wanted to make sure you tick the box that says do not store my DNA data. We don't want that stored anywhere. However, then really interesting data comes out about your DNA genetic coding. For example, the sleep fragmented gene. Now, I have that. So what that means is that if I get woken up from the puppy dog butterscotch or from our daughter Clara, I can't get back to sleep. Yeah. B, if that keeps continually happening to me for the 3 or 4 days, my mental health will do this. My husband, on his testing, shows that he doesn't have that gene. And I know this. Jay can have fragmented sleep, and his mental health actually stays completely level and fine. Yeah. Even though he's tired, he's like, I am so level with my mood. And I remind him of that every single night before we go to bed. Babe, you get up for the dog. I've got the weird gene. Off you go. So it's just like really interesting about your body. You know, even it's got, do you metabolize caffeine? Does your liver have the enzyme to metabolize caffeine quickly? If it does, you can do what Brett does and go all the way up to 2 p.m. and then cut it or switch to decaf, because then it's going to impact your deep REM sleep. If you don't have that gene expression, you kind of need to cut it at midday. Coffee. Otherwise, again, it's going to impact your sleep. But these are all cool things that are available out there. It's not saying you must do this. It's just nice to know, right? Like what tools are available for us, what is out there. And again, like this thing is your vessel. We only get one home. If we don't take care of this thing, we've got nowhere else to live.
Yeah, and if you're trying to live in a house with other people,
yes,
particularly our son's 19 now, second's 16, daughter's 12, they're not babies anymore, and they're also trying to live in the same house. So understanding who likes to stay up late, who likes to go to bed, what they like to do is really, really important. So
Absolutely.
The Life DNA test's really great, the Whoop's really great, the Aura Ring's really great. And by using that as a parent, my kids have seen it and have gone, oh, how does that work? Rather than trying to tell them. And I'm like, well, that told me this about myself.
Yeah.
And now by observation, I can see you're this.
100%.
Maybe you want to think about that, which is really interesting.
So good.
So
The Toto Wellness Partner, got that?
Yeah.
The toilet that measures your, that's a super cool thing. The Toto, there's so many things out there to enhance us. As I think it's really changing landscape. Back when I was in corporate, it was like our CEO, we would honour the CEO that would turn up at 6 a.m. after getting off an international flight at 2, almost as this brand of machismo that would party every night. I think the landscape's completely shifting. It's almost like the top CEOs and leaders now are corporate athletes. And they're like, we want the 1%. How do you make this cognition the edge? Yes, we can have fun on the weekend, but Monday to Friday, it is game time. And we are really dialing things in. So things like the Toto Wellness Partner, which is, it has electrodes in the toilet bowl that'll pick up early detection of prostate cancer through your cells in your urine for men. It'll also analyse your microbiome data and shoot a message to the app on your phone saying, excuse me, do you know that you're eating too many firmicutes? Maybe we suggest for the next 30 days you start eating these kinds of foods to starve out those firmicute population because you've got an imbalance in your gut microbiome. How wild is that?
It's amazing science. It's incredible.
It's cool stuff.
No, I've forgotten what the other two things were.
When it comes to sleep, well, we spoke about coffee, we spoke about screens.
What was the third one?
Booze.
Alcohol. Well, does everyone know, what is the data on alcohol?
Alcohol's an interesting one.
It can't be good for your sleep.
It's terrible for sleep.
Yeah. So is it a lunchtime activity?
Definitely
I'm hearing
lunchtime
Andrew
activity.
Huberman saying like no alcohol ever is
I
ever
know.
good for you at all, which I was in Scotland recently, it was so cold. I'm trying to think if I was with Kenny and it was so cold. And the guy pulled over the Land Rover and pulled the whiskey out of the back and said, you've got to have one of these. And I was like, see, that was just made for right now. And it was incredible. And I was like, no one can convince me that's a bad idea. So slept like a baby that night. It was lunchtime. So what is the data on this?
So it's such a personal choice. Huberman, Matt Walker, kind of like the gurus in this space will say 0 alcohol. Just from a cognition perspective, sleep, I mean, it just impacts so many things. I love having a glass of Shiraz on a Friday night, or I love having a really nice glass of champagne. I'm like quality over quantity and a particular number. And this is just based on our own research that we do. So Monday to Friday, I don't drink because I need to be on my game up here. Friday, I will definitely have a drink, Friday night, and I'll stop at 2. So and this is all, it comes back to deep REM again. So if you have 2 drinks followed by a water chaser, not too close to bed, from a deep REM perspective, your brain still seems to be okay. Like you still seem to clock that deep REM enough. This would be something to be interesting to check your Whoop or your aura and see where your limit is. For some people, it could be 1 drink, particularly if you're going through perimenopause, menopause, your testosterone levels might be dropping, things like that as we're getting older. So test your body and see where your limit is. The average is about 2 drinks followed by a water chaser. Now, if you go over that, okay, your brain will respond kind of different. It gets knocked out for the first part of the night, which is sometimes what we want. We're like, yes, knock me out tonight, sedate me, right? A lot of people use alcohol as a crux to unwind from the day and get them off to sleep. And what we see is that if you're tracking you on a Whoop or an Aura ring, probably 0 deep REM for that first part of the night. Then you get a thing called rebound insomnia, which is when you wake up to go to the bathroom. So your body will wake you up, you'll go to the bathroom, you've metabolised half of your alcohol by then through the liver, and then you come back to bed and you toss and turn and have a lot of dreams. And again, if you're going to clock yourself on a Whoop or an Aura, you'd see 0 deep REM. And so
you might as well just keep going.
Just go hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a message.
Yeah, that's right. 2 or 20. That's what you want to do on the weekend.
I think that's about right. So that's a second issue in terms of the 3 biggest issues people are having: what to teach your kids, how to sleep, how to de-stress. Now, in all the other research you're doing and what you're speaking on at the moment, what's the big, like the biggest topic that you're seeing? You're doing, how many groups are you doing a year? A couple of hundred?
300.
Yeah, 300.
A year.
So in terms of what people are asking for, like when you survey room after room after room, what do you find are the big couple of issues that are out there?
Burnout.
Yeah.
Stress.
Yeah.
Communication. That's one of our big ones we're doing now because of AI. We want to keep our human edge.
Yeah.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Injecting humour,
Yeah.
how to connect with a human being, how to empathetically listen.
Yeah.
These are skills that we're missing,
Yeah.
particularly as I'm seeing some of our future coming through. And so that's a huge one that people keep asking me for. So stress, resilience, sleep, communication, they're the big ticket items.
So what's the burnout thing? Like what? So I'm hearing a lot about burnout.
It's huge.
I'm not sure what burnout is.
And why is that? What do you do?
Well, because I exercise and I try not to drink and I try to breathe and I do things to try not burn out.
6-week breaks.
And I have proper holidays.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Because you taught me that.
Yeah.
And it's been the best thing that I've done in the last 4 years.
Yeah. Take
So
a
thank
proper
you.
holiday. So talk about this. So I have this theory that most people never really have a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they have a holiday, they don't seem to have a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do well not doing that and never burn out, to be fair. But there is this epidemic of burnout.
100%.
So why is that?
We pace set so hard and we take on more and more work and then we don't prioritise ourselves. So there's a big thing coming up around lack. So we lack the focus right, on ourselves. We put everyone else above us. We lack the boundaries. We find it really difficult to say no. And we lack the awareness. Burnout is kind of cumulative. It's going to sneak up on you, right? And your body will always keep your score. There's a good book out there of that title. The twitchy eye, the tired but wired, the waking up at 1 a.m. and can't get back to sleep, the irritable gut, they're kind of signals and clues to us that, hey, I'm starting to burn out.
To build
and you're
up
not listening to me. You're not listening to my body. And then all of a sudden you get laid out on the floor, right?
So it's presented as flame out. The way I always think about it is people present it as flame out. That one day somebody just burns out. And I always like, that's weird. Like, how does that happen? That makes no sense to me. Whereas what I've observed, we've advised, I've been advising owners of businesses for 30 years, and I've watched it more as a cumulative process.
100%.
So that's really interesting.
It's
And the
definitely
burn starts
months,
years before.
Years.
Yeah,
That's why we get sick.
yeah,
It's that whole thing, like if you don't take care of your wellness every day, you get forced to take care of your illness.
yeah,
Should we say it again?
yeah. If you don't take care of your
Yeah.
wellness, you'll get forced to take care of your illness, which is
That's
really
so true.
interesting. Okay, so
And let's
so
talk
what's
about the
doing
breaks.
it? Yeah,
I think one of the, I think one of the best things that, there's been a lot of great things, Brett, that you've empowered me with, but one of the best things is these regular breaks. And so every 6 weeks I take a break. Yeah, we do 300 keynotes a week, I only work 40 weeks a year. And every 6 weeks I take a break. And that could just be a weekend or a long weekend. It doesn't have to be expensive. And it could just be going camping.
yeah.
And so what happens here on that 6-week break, it's pretty magical. Because when you told me you did that, I went and had a look at the science behind it. And people like
And I had no science. I just was like, who can, you know, it's impossible to train for the Olympic 100 metres
Yeah.
for 25 years.
Yes, absolutely.
No athlete doesn't.
Yeah, that's right. And so what happens is you get this thing called anticipatory joy the 2 weeks before you get the break.
Yeah.
Like you speak to anyone going on a holiday, how do they sound?
They're excited.
They're excited. And how annoying is it for us when we don't have a break coming up? Super annoying. And so what they're experiencing there is anticipatory joy. It's almost the thought of having a holiday makes them more excited than going on the holiday.
Yep.
Yeah, the coffee tastes nicer, the sky is bluer, the air is sweeter. If you take a break every 6 weeks, it could just be on the weekend, yeah? What happens is you get anticipatory joy, you get the serotonin release that floods through the system, then you take the break. And then you come back from the break, so you kind of recharge yourself. But then when you get back, right, you go hard, you sprint. This is what we do. We sprint for 6 weeks. We work so hard and we're at work. But don't worry, because in 6 weeks' time, I've got another break scheduled in. And so that philosophy has given me the best longevity for my job. It gives me joy. It makes me creative, because when I actually take those breaks, I go off grid. I actually don't take my phone. I take my dumb phone that doesn't have any access to social media. I take an old school camera. And so then when I'm on the break, I just took my daughter to Tuscany. I mean, that's not off the grid camping. I know that seems really outrageous.
But it was epic. It looked amazing.
But it was epic, and I was with her the whole time, mindfully.
Yeah.
And so then the people, because you're not doing this at the same time being on the phone, right, with the people that you're on the break with. So they get a real mindful version. Yeah. And I think the most amazing thing is that when you switch off from the outside world, something incredible happens to you. You switch on the inside, and you actually become more creative. My most innovative ideas happen when I'm off grid.
Yeah. Now, some people think, okay, but then you're not working. But it is my view that your brain is always working.
Absolutely.
And a lot of really creative ideas come from being in different places, seeing different things, and they add enormous value to your business ultimately.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Chelsea and I said, look, when we had kids, the school holidays are they're in the calendar. There's not much you can do about them. And a very good mentor of mine had said he knew that kids, virtually all they remember is holidays. And so he said, look, he travelled 3 out of 4 weeks as a very high-profile consultant. And he said, look, I would just overinvest in holidays. So when they were on holidays, he would spend a fortune, not that you need to, but to take them to places that would be memorable. He had plenty of money. And he took them to Africa, he took them to India. And these kids now are in their mid-30s. And he said, look, they don't remember how hard I worked. They remember the times we spent together.
Yeah.
And he felt always terrible about not being there every night. Great wife who really raised the kids. But that was a bit of a hack. So there's a balance between, the extreme version of what he had. I just took out of it this holiday idea. Now, with technology, you can work. So, in a crisis, we're not ever very far away. You can get on a plane and go somewhere. So that, from my point of view, I never felt anxious that you couldn't just get on a plane and come home if there was a drama, or go back up the road. And certainly when we didn't have, any real financial resources to invest in that, I was just like, great, you can go kayaking, it costs $10. You can buy a piece of fish, it costs $5, and off you go. So to me, that was like, in terms of how you can play for a long time, the real game.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting. So do you think the burnout is happening because people don't have holidays, or they don't have a daily routine, or?
All of the above. I think we have the intentions of doing exercise throughout the day, right? Or do a 10-minute pause to have a meditation break, or eat cleaner.
Yeah.
And then what happens is we clock on at, 9 a.m. and the world starts, and all of a sudden we get swept up into the business of the day, and then we get home at 8 p.m. and we haven't made time for it.
Smacked.
And that routine, then all of a sudden we reach for the wine, right? The maybe not the cleaner meal, and then we have a disrupted sleep, and so the next day we crave the bacon and egg roll. We have the 5,000, and down we go. It's just this perpetual cycle, and so it's just having this wedge into the, you know what, today's the day that I kind of start making the changes. And I've got this pretty cool slide that I now put up in my presentations called the discipline equation, and it's all around like the age that you are, the days that you've lived, and the days that you have left. And 85 is the life expectancy here in Australia for women, 81 for men. And so I've lived more days than what I have left.
Yeah.
And so I think about that all the time. And it's not that slide isn't to scare people or that sort of metaphor. What it's there to do is to say this: if you're not happy with the current state of play of where your life is, like how you're feeling every day, are you waking up full of energy? Like, are you really enjoying this ride? Then guess what? We get the accountability and ownership to change that. And
So what's the change hack? So for everyone here today, you can't lead what you're not doing for your team. So being able to change if you know that there's, you want to make change. Mm-hmm. What's the change hack for the people in the room, and how should they take that to their business?
What's the intrinsic motivator? Like, you've got to find out what that hook is for you. For your health and well-being, like if you're not the best version of yourself, bringing your best version of you to work, you cannot be the best version for your team. Like, that's just how it is. If you're role modelling behaviour, say, hey, you know what, we really care about your mental health and well-being here, and you start peppering them at 2 a.m. in the morning with emails, there is a complete dissonance there. And you have to find that intrinsic thing. Like for me, and I think I'll credit my psychiatrist for this, because she said to me something that massively unlocked this motivation, was that, Chelsea, if you don't take care of yourself every day, if you don't go to the gym, if you don't eat cleaner, if you don't meditate, if you actually don't put in these 6-week breaks, if you don't take your medication every morning, who does that impact? I said, well, I'd get sick and it would directly impact me, and I need to take 4 weeks off the company. And she's like, well, that kind of sucks for you, but who else would that impact? And I said, it would directly impact my daughter, Clara, and my husband, Jay. And she said, is that fair to Clara? Does your 9-year-old deserve a burnt out, stressed out, anxious mum? Does she deserve that from you? And I said, no. And so she said, every day from now on in, you do it for her. And so whenever I'm booking in a massage, I think, Clara, this is for you.
It's good. I like that. And I do like that. And it does make me laugh. And it leads me to literally what I was thinking of as you were speaking, is that, so you're on an aeroplane and they say, in the event of a drama, put your oxygen on first and then help others. Now, I won't tell you who I have this discussion with. You can probably work it out. And I have always said that if you don't look after your health, you're useless to other people. But as business owners, you do well by helping other people, but you can't help people to such an extent that you destroy your own health. So how do people frame, like I love that, I know people laugh, but it is true that if you don't find a way to prioritise your own well-being, the impacts are going to be severe. 100%. So how do you unpack that? Is it just I just use the oxygen thing.
I love that though.
That's my, if I don't put my oxygen on, you're all going to die. So I'm putting the oxygen on.
I love that though. It's a bit like the psychological victor versus the psychological victim. Like, at the end of the day, right, where we can have this great conversation up here, or you could listen to a great podcast or read an inspiring book, or, I mean, that's just the scaffolding, right? At the end of the day, it comes down to the individual, and you have to want to own that stuff and have accountability. I think there's a big accountability lack in our society at the moment. Maybe a lot of people point their fingers out, and then there's like 4 fingers they forget that are pointing back at them. Yeah, and you see this in your work, maybe with some of your colleagues or the people that you're managing, and they're quick to blame out. And so I think it's that whole thing, like, we've got to start owning more of our stuff. And again, like, why is it important for you? It's like it's the health span, right? Like, I don't really care living to 105. I'd rather live to 90 and have great energy and, like, just kind of dance off the planet. I don't want to end up with Alzheimer's and dementia at 70. I don't want that. And so it's up to the individual to kind of unlock that motivation for you. What is it for you to unlock it? There's 10 other ways in research to make you stay accountable and intrinsically motivated. But I think it all comes down to that one thing. Like, what do you do? How do you do it? Keep yourself motivated every day.
I just care about people.
Yeah.
So I joke that, you know, if you don't put your oxygen on, then you're useless to other people. So that's Beck and I. She's like, you know, you'd put your oxygen on. You're damn right I would.
Yeah.
But that's it. Otherwise, you know, you can't be useful. So I like to be useful.
So good.
So, but that's just a very short hack, and it wasn't a book. I just was like, well, you know, and I've never thought you want to live to 105. I had a brother die in a car accident at 45 when I was 29.
Wow.
And I just said, okay, so, you know, time is limited, death is certain. You don't know that you have more than 45 years, so why act as if you've got 145?
Absolutely.
So you need to be pretty focused on what you're doing. I love the book Atomic Habits. I didn't realise, and you mentioned Jack Canfield's book. Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And if you haven't read the first book in that, it's an amazing book. I love that you mentioned it because when I wrote my first book, I got there, How to Write a Book series. It was 24 cassette tapes and a workbook from America, right back in 1997 in ancient history. And they're amazing people. But they had this mindset idea of you're ultimately responsible for your mindset. But, you know, I never saw that as a stress. I just, you know, thought I guess I hung around people that thought like that. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
So in the business, turning up in the right way, and it's a challenge for all of us because everyone's got incoming now from 4,000 sources. You know, it used to be phone, then it was email, now it's text, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And so I've become much more conscious of it, mainly because I look at the kids. So, you know, trying to work out why you know what you know, it makes you think, well, how come kids don't know that? So the accountability piece, I'm really interested in. Atomic Habits, if anyone hasn't read it, says start with tiny habits, don't try and change the world. I thought the best distinction in that book is you're not your goals, you're your habits.
Absolutely.
I had read this saying that, you know, ideas, actions, habits, your destiny, which has stuck with me forever. I guess to wrap up, and look, we could chat with Chelsea all day, and I'd encourage you to grab her on the way out and build a relationship because I never fail to learn something every time we have a chat. But where's the Atomic Habits piece sit in this? You know, I always think about the first thing to get you moving. You know, is it start with sleep? Is it start with screens, alcohol, coffee before sleep? Good day starts the day before.
Yeah.
Is it lunchtime the best day to change your life? When is it?
I would say if you bookend your day. So what I mean by that is you just, half an hour before you go to bed, just don't check your screens. Make sure you just, sleep is like the elixir of life. If you can nail that as a corporate athlete, you set the next day up for success. So nail the sleep. The bookend, what I mean by that is half an hour before you go to bed, first 8 minutes when you first wake up.
Okay, when you wake up?
When you first wake up.
Yeah, what are we doing for that 8 minutes?
So instead of looking at your phone for the first
I love this because it's not like human the first 8 hours. So the first 8 minutes, what are we doing?
So first 8 minutes, what I'm going to really encourage you to think about is instead of looking at your phone, because as you can imagine, right, like there's a lot of pain in our world, we take that content in, streams through the eyeballs, hits the amygdalas, massive amount of cortisol, adrenal comes up from the adrenal glands, but it's the synaptic connections that fire within the first few minutes. And so if you're looking at a murder on the news feed, first up, or a work email that's causing you stress, your synaptic connections are firing in the wrong kind of way for stress and anxiety and worry and paranoia and fear. Instead, what I'm going to encourage you to try as a little challenge is for the next few days, let's say 5-day challenge, phone goes down. Well, number one, if your alarm clock sounds like this, beep, beep, if that's your alarm sound, I really encourage you to change that one. You're ripping yourself out of delta, straight up into beta brainwave of high stress. You actually skip theta brainwave, that really beautiful neuroplastic element. And so one, change it to nature sounds, a musical track. You can wake up with a prayer, anything but the beep beep sound. They even got an applause app now on the phone. You can wake up with a clap. Give yourself a clap. Waking up, well done.
That's good.
5 for 5 challenge. So number 2 is phone goes down on bedside table. That's a very easy tip, okay? But that's where the discipline lies. It's like that whole thing, discipline eats motivation, right? Okay, so now we're empowered to know that this is bad for us first up in the morning. Phone will go down. That's step number 2. Step number 3 of this 5 for 5 challenge is up here inside your mind. I'm just going to ask you to think about 3 things that you're grateful for while you're pulling back the bed and getting up. Gratitude research rocks. It's not about being positive Pollyanna your whole life. Toxic positivity is a thing out there that we see on social media.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's important to feel all emotions of this life.
Makes me not want to be positive. It's making me sick.
So it's so important, though, as a part of the brain, that algorithm's the right kind of way. Plus, it's a really cool way that we know how to release serotonin into your brain. Could be the smallest of things, right? Turn on a faucet here in Australia. Guess what? You get clean drinking water. That's pretty amazing to me. You have orbs inside your skull that will start to sense light when you wake up. They're called your eyeballs, and therefore you can see the world with them. That's pretty magnificent. And what you start to notice is that the more you start to do this, it directs the brain in that kind of way. And then tip 4 is Dr. Daniel Amen's work, and he always says about if you wake up in the morning within the first few minutes and say something like, today's going to be a good day, something that's kind of like that in nature, where empathy resides in the brain gets stimulated, and we definitely need more empathy in this world. And so it's a really, again, it's just algorithming your brain to look for reasons for it to be so. And then the last step of the 5 for 5 is just do it for 5 days. Try that technique out for 5 days and see if you notice a difference in the world. Like, the reason why I know that you can all do it in here is because I'm married to a skeptic banker. Do you know what they are? They are people who challenge you all the time on science. And I'd say, darling, look at this research. And he'd be like, no, babe, I've got to look at the market. I don't have time for that. And then I'd go, okay, Jay, 3 months later down the track, have a look at this brain scan. This person's brain changing in real time. How cool is this? Right? Yeah. And he'd be like, no, darling, I don't have time for that. And then I said to Jay, you know what? N equals 1. You're the best subject matter. Just try it out. And so he did it. He did it for 5 days. And his whole lens changed of the entire world. 4 years ago, I recruited Jay out of the bank. He's now the general manager at my company at EQ Minds. And he said to me earlier this year, well, it's been the only time I've been happy to sleep my way to the top. I'm like, well, thank you, darling. That's a joke, by the way.
Love him.
Can't say anything these days.
Exactly. Hey, so I've got the red flashing light. That's good. But questions. Have we got any questions in on the screen, Josh, up there, or are we out of time? We're out of time. Right, no questions. I've got enough time to thank Chelsea for coming today. I hope everyone's really enjoyed it. I'm so excited that you were able to make the time, Chelsea. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everyone.